Well, hey there, folks. Thank you for joining us here on this episode of Common Ground. And my, oh my, has it been a busy last couple of weeks.
It really has, yes.
It has, absolutely. You know, this week we're back to square one here on Common Ground. We have Senator John Cooper back with us and brought him in, well, first because he's a good guy, B, and don't tell his wife I said that. Miss Sue might think opposite. John's a good guy and a good friend of mine, and he's been mighty busy the last couple of weeks, so just want to bring him in and talk a little bit about what's going on. So, Senator Cooper, it's good to be here with you.
Great to be here, and we appreciate you giving us this opportunity to do that.
Absolutely, glad to do it. You know, so let's talk about the highway plan.
Okay, I did vote for it, and we really do need increasing funding for the highway system in our state because it's deteriorating. And if it goes further, we're going to have damage to the inside of the roadbed beyond the pavement. And right now, there's some highways we can do overlays on, and we won't have the expensive deterioration beneath the pavement that we will have if we continue to wait for spending these dollars on maintenance and improving our road system. And if you look at some of the things that's out there right now, the highway condition, it's at a critical need right now, and we need to address that and have addressed that this week.
Sure. You know, I know that, you know, Alec Farmer, he's from Jonesboro and member of this committee, but a good friend of a lot of us here. And, you know, I've been to many meetings that he's been a part of, and he's given us a presentation. Yeah.
It's a good presentation. I've seen it.
It is. So we talk about the deteriorating highway system, the lack of funding that we have. We have the 12th largest highway system here in the country.
That is amazing that people, when they know that, I don't think many of our people realize that we have more highway miles than California, New York, and Florida in highway system that we have to maintain.
That's amazing. And unfortunately, we're number 42 in highway revenue per mile. And so, you know, first off, I think that it's important that we take a step back and look at how thankful that we are to have been able to do the projects that we've done. But also given funding for this, look at the many opportunities that are ahead of us that we could complete. So,
one thing I'd like for the viewers to know that I think this is really a credit to the job that our highway department has done with the dollars that they've had. Because when you think about it on balance, the 12th largest highway system in the country, dealing with 42nd in highway funding per mile. Mm-hmm. So that really tells you the highway department is very frugal with the money that is being spent per mile, and they deserve credit for that. And so I'd like to give them that credit. But that doesn't alleviate the fact that we need more revenue to maintain what we have.
Sure thing. You know, and back on this same slide, it shows that we have $9.3 billion in needs out there and only $4.5 billion in available revenue for that.
That's a dramatic gap in funding.
I mean, we are less than half of what we need to be, and that's just to maintain what we have right now. So, you know, we go down here, and there's a lot of slides here where we can look at this one, and these are some of the regional pictures. Lawrence County, Mississippi County, Randolph County. Just look at the state of these roads.
But if you look at across the state, those are situations in individual locations. But that's not the only places that you find that deterioration. It's throughout the state.
Oh yeah, I mean many of us drive on these roads going home. So definitely important for us to look at here. So you voted for that bill?
I voted for it. I'm glad that I did. It's a good vote, and I know we don't like to vote for spending. None of us do that, but it's the responsible thing to do for the good of our state, both economically and for the safety of our constituents that we all serve. And so it's unfortunately improvements take money to do it. There's nothing free.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is a separate measure here, and you can do a lot better explaining this than I can, but we have a tax right now that sunsets here coming up soon. So the way that I understand, you guys have referred that to the citizens to vote on.
Yes, that is a temporary tax that's in place right now that is about to sunset. and that measure was to be voted out so that they'd have the opportunity to make that permanent if the citizens choose to do that later on.
Another thing that came up here the last couple of weeks, I know that you filed a bill, worked with the Attorney General's office on that.
Yeah, that bill was filed. Actually, they brought it to me. I have another bill, SB 175, that does a little bit of that on a smaller scale, and I don't know if they saw what I did or if they already had that in mind in the process, but it has to do with background checks dealing with boards and agencies. Mine only did with the board aspect, but this one expands it to some agencies as well, and it has to do with licensing regulation of people being able to obtain licenses that have criminal background of one kind or another.
Okay.
What we did on that is to take some uncertain language that's out there in a lot of the code in Arkansas, like be of good character or be a good reputation or something along that line that doesn't mean the same to everyone, and it's certainly hard to identify in code really what it means. So we have dramatically improved the language in that and have defined that in code, and then when you get over into where it deals with that under the board, we took that uncertain language out and inserted the statute in place of that.
Okay. Talk about barbers.
That's
situation.
A pretty hairy subject right there.
It is. So, seeing the news that you've had a little bit of pushback there, but just explain to us, what does that bill do, and what do you plan on changing about it?
Well, that bill is part of what came out of the red tape reduction task force idea. It was not specifically recommended out of the task force, but the idea is there. And the idea is to remove as much bureaucracy in licensing as we can. And we have a problem in the barber side of that and the cosmetology side in that they do similar work, but yet they're handled under dramatically different regulation. The cosmetology side of it is handled under the Department of Health in an advisory capacity, and the barber side is standalone. They don't have any oversight, and they have their own enforcement power, and involved in that, they have the capacity to regulate both licensing and curriculum and all kinds of that, like issues like that. And when you have members of the board that's making those kinds of decisions, you're into a situation that is conflict of interest, and that violates the Department of Labor licensing laws. And one of the issues that we need to really clean up, not only on this issue, but maybe in some other boards across the state, and in other states are working to do the same thing. So what we're doing there is we were doing some other things in the original bill that won't be done. I'm going to refile another bill this week that will address the core issue of the oversight and the competitive side of that, the conflict of interest, and leave the rest of it alone, and just do what needs to be fixed to put it in good shape legally.
Well, good deal. Well, looking forward to seeing what comes out of that.
Well,
so
maybe this one won't be quite as hairy as the other one.
Well, maybe not.
I think really this should be supported by the industry because it's good for the industry. It's good for consumers, and it'll ultimately be good for the economy. And the interesting thing to me that I did not know until I started working with the owners of the schools in developing this was they were resistant to being put under the Department of Health in an advisory role when this started. But now they are very supportive of that way of regulating their industry, and they love being there because it makes the rulemaking process seamless to them, and they don't have to deal with as much of the enforcement side of it than they were having to before.
That's mighty interesting.
Yep.
One thing that we talked about and something that folks at home may not know, you shared with me this. What's the difference between a cosmetologist and a barber?
Well, it's only one thing. It's the ability to use a straight razor.
Who knew? Who knew? My wife says I need to find one.
You need one?
I need one. I need.
Can I use it?
Come on.
Can I shave you with a straight razor?
Come right ahead. Just don't get below this right here. So, last week, just going to a subject that a lot of folks have probably heard about in the news or seen through social media. We have this Stand Your Ground bill,
right.
And Thursday night you guys had a pretty contested hearing there in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Bob Ballinger's bill to enact a Stand Your Ground law in the state. Mm-hmm. Of course, it failed in the Judiciary Committee, and just from what I understand that this bill would do is that it would expand the circumstances of which a person could use deadly force in self-defense of others, even if there was an option to retreat.
Right.
So tell us this. I mean, what would the bill have done that's different from what we have now? And how'd that hearing go?
Well, the difference in this bill and what we have now, we have a Stand Your Ground bill already, which was passed a couple of years ago, and I believe Representative Dwight Tosh was the author of that, and that was a Stand Your Ground bill. I think where we are right now is we're very much in danger of moving from an issue of self-defense to moving to a position of encouraging conflict. And when you get into a position of encouraging conflict between armed individuals, the result is a likely tragedy. And so that's a problem with this bill, I believe. And the first time I read this bill, the red flags went up all over it. I was never in favor of this bill from the first time I read it. And another thing that is dramatic about this bill is that it hides evidence from juries if it goes to trial. And basically it sets up a situation where it inhibits investigations, and then if it comes to trial, the evidence about what happened in the last few seconds before the trigger was pulled is inadmissible in court, about whether or not anybody tried to de-escalate or not. And I've served on two major juries, and I was elected to the jury foreman on both of those, and one of them is really closely related to what could happen in this. It was a murder trial, and in that one, it involved a man shooting his wife, and she was in the kitchen, and he was standing right close to the door. And several feet away, she was trapped in the kitchen, and rather than him stepping out the door, he had a gun in his hand, and he killed her. And not only did he kill her, he pulled the gun and cocked it. It was a revolver. He missed with the first shot, and it went through the wall and fell in the round went in the bathroom and fell in the tub. And then he cocked the gun again, but that time he lowered the hammer, and that round did not have a firing pin strike on it. And then he cocked the gun again and shot her in the temple and killed her. And then he pleaded self-defense. And his statement then was that he was afraid that she would pick up a knife and throw it at him. Well, I think you can see the problem with all of that. And there was no doubt in my mind that man intentionally murdered his wife, and that's what the charge was. That was what the prosecutors brought. But plug in this kind of situation with maybe a stand your ground situation, and that situation probably would not even come to trial under this bill, because all he would have to say advocating a stand your ground position is that he was afraid that she might throw a knife at him, and his fear of her throwing a knife at him would basically take whatever he did off the table as far as charges. So He was ultimately convicted of manslaughter, but that's basically all we could get out of it. And what I want the viewers to see is that there's a very high standard already with juries. It takes a lot to convict somebody of murder. And there has to be very strong evidence to get 12 jurors to agree on a charge like murder. So now let's plug in another level of this. If the prosecutors do not believe that their charge is going to result in a conviction, they're probably not even going to bring the charges, even though they know that this is probably a case of murder. So those kind of situations will not even wind up in the hands of a jury. And basically what you're talking about there is a murderer walking. So I think that's why that's why I'm anyway very leery of this piece of legislation, that I believe that it will move us from a legitimate situation, which we have right now, of legitimate protection of self-defense, and it will move us into a situation of encouraging conflict.
From what I understand, Senator Bollinger is going to bring this up in another bill. Is there any way that this could come about in a form that you would support?
Well, I think this bill only does about two things, and that's the core of what this bill does, and I don't see how you can modify that and it still be the bill that it's purported to be. I don't know. He hasn't told me what he plans to do with another one, but I think this one is dead because there was an attempt made to expunge the vote and that failed, and so I think that pretty much takes this bill out of the picture. What he does in the future, I don't know.
Yeah. No, so right now, I mean, I think that one of the big questions from some of the proponents of this bill and others is that, really two questions. Does current law right now suffice in these type of situations?
I believe it does. I don't have any problem with the stand your ground law that we have. In fact, there is zero evidence in any case that there's anything to fix. Even the sponsor of this bill said that the prosecutors are handling the current law appropriately, and they could not point to a single case that would be out there that this bill, if it were to pass, would fix. There's no problem to fix. So I don't really understand even why this bill was even brought, except maybe to hang a shingle out for somebody. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm comfortable with the law we have, and I'm comfortable with my family carrying under that law. And what could happen out there, I think they are adequately protected, and they will be if something happened like that. I'm comfortable with that. There is a situation that I'm concerned about in this law, that it could actually give a license to people to commit murder. And the way that might happen under this law is that somebody could bait a victim. And when that victim responded, then they could actually commit a cold-blooded murder and then be protected under the evidence proceedings of this law. That is extremely concerning to me. And I don't think we need to create something we're going to have to fix later.
Well, so what's coming up next? Let's move to that.
All right.
So we got a busy week.
Yeah, I think this week will be a very busy week. We're getting into at least the last half of the session. And this week I will have a modification to the barber bill, which is a very simplified approach to that. I think this is a very good approach that should be supported by the industry. I think it will be. I will be bringing up another bill that, actually it's already out there. It's being amended a little bit, and I'll be filing those amendments probably Monday, hopefully. And this is a bill that is supported by the Attorney General's office. It's quite a large bill, and I'll be working hard to pass this one, because this has to do with background checks for licensing, and this bill is supported by the Attorney General's office, and they want to see this passed. And I guess there'll be some other things, but that'll probably be the highlights.
Highlights. Well, good deal. Well, we appreciate you coming,
Yes, sir.
and we thank you for everything
Good
that you've
thing,
told
Jeff.
us today.
All right.
And we look forward to having you
Okay.
back soon. And folks, of
Looking
course,
forward to it.
absolutely. Folks, and of course, we thank you for coming and joining with us. We call this thing common ground here because, that's what we want to consider this. Here in the Republican Party, it's important to know that with the Craighead County Republicans, we are a group that is all-inclusive. Mm-hmm. We are a group where every opinion is respected, every opinion is welcome to be heard, and certainly we welcome that, and we welcome your comments. We welcome you to attend our meetings. We meet on the fourth Tuesday of every month here, and to check out our Facebook page, check out our social media and website, and stay tuned for what's ahead, folks. We thank you for coming and joining with us, and we'll see you next week.
Good to be with you.
Yes, thank you.